Good morning, I'm Chris. My wife Erin and I have been part of the Dunedin Elam whānau for about 4 years now, and it's my privilege to bring you the next in our series of messages from Matthew chapter 15. But let me start by asking a question. Do you have a strategy to effectively deal with stress? 6 months ago, I experienced levels of stress that I had never experienced before. Not just one thing, but 3 overwhelming things hit me one after the other, like a freight train. For over 3 months, I experienced the negative effects of stress. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I hope you never do, because to be quite honest, it's horrible. What's more, high levels of stress over a long period of time can be debilitating, even damaging to your mental and emotional health. But over recent months, I've discovered something else about stress. You can use stress to strengthen yourself. Stress can be used to develop a sense of purpose in life. It can also be used to sharpen you mentally, to increase your emotional capacity. It can be used to build faith. Last but not least, it can be used to enhance the connection between your mind and your physical body, to enable you to learn to hear what your body is saying and take note of it. Whether stress has a positive or negative effect on us depends on one thing: whether or not we have a strategy to effectively deal with stress. Of course, there's one particular situation that we're all finding stressful, isn't there? COVID-19, it's back again. Alert levels, restrictions to our work, to our social life, to our church life, to our travel. Then there's the virus itself. You know, it's killed over 800,000 people on this planet already. It's keeping going and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. It's clear that if we want to eradicate this virus again in New Zealand, we're going to have to fight it. That's what we're doing. But it's stressful, isn't it? So let me ask you again, do you have a strategy to effectively deal with stress? It may surprise you to know that Jesus had a strategy to deal with stress. Hang on, you may say, that's ridiculous. Jesus was the Son of God. How could he ever be stressed? But Jesus was like us in every respect. Even though he was divine, he was fully human. He was like us in every way save one. He'd never sinned. But make no mistake, if we experience stress, Jesus experienced stress too. And this morning, the passage we're looking at from Matthew 15, verses 21 to 28, gives us a window into Jesus' own strategy to deal with stress. So let's read it now. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and is suffering terribly." Jesus did not answer her a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." "Yes, Lord," she said, "but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus said, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed at that very moment. So what place did Jesus leave? Probably Gennesaret, which is situated on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee. The reference could be to the city itself or to the whole region stretching down the western coast. This was the setting for the dispute that Jesus had with the Pharisees and teachers of the law that Adam spoke about last week. And as Adam noted, this was not just a dispute among colleagues, friends, or even hostile neighbours. This was a dispute between Jesus and some very powerful people. These people represented the upper echelons of Jewish society, and while ultimately subjugate to the Roman overlords, they still controlled nearly every aspect of Jewish life. It wasn't wise to fall foul of them. When Erin and I were travelling last year, we visited Tallinn in Estonia for one day. During that day, we visited the Hotel Viru. Now, this hotel was built by the Soviets. It was a luxury hotel, and it was designed to attract the rich, the powerful, political and business leaders from the democratic West to a lovely Baltic seaside holiday. All the suites were bugged. All the phones were tapped. There were even wireless microphones embedded in the bottom of the china plates. The level of technology that the Soviets employed to spy on their guests was staggering, even by today's standards. The whole top floor of the hotel was dedicated to recording conversations, processing the information, and sending any sensitive intelligence to Moscow on a daily basis. At one point in the tour, Erin asked the tour guide, a woman who had lived as a young person under the Soviet regime, what it had been like. It was not a pleasant description. Apart from restrictions, deprivations, and the indoctrination of the system, at any stage, a person who was suspected of threatening internal security could be carried away by the KGB in the middle of the night and never seen again. In short, it was a police state. Israel in the time of Jesus was much more like a Soviet police state than a modern Western democracy. When Jesus' disciples came to Jesus in verse 12 of Matthew 15 and told him that he had offended the political heavyweights from Jerusalem, they were probably trying to warn him of the consequences of falling foul of these people. They were really saying, Jesus, are you looking for a way to shorten your life? Because you're now going about it in the best way possible. And of course, this is eventually what did happen to Jesus, didn't it? So perhaps this is why Jesus and his disciples decided to leave Gennesaret and withdraw to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Now, this was non-Jewish territory, northwest of the Sea of Galilee and bordered by the east coast of the Mediterranean Sea. It's the area now occupied by southern Lebanon. Perhaps Jesus and his disciples decided it was wise to move out of the sphere of Jewish political influence. However, there's another word in this verse that should attract our attention. We're told that Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Now, we've encountered this word before in Matthew's Gospel. In fact, in the preceding chapter, there we're told that after the arrest and execution of John the Baptist, Jesus withdrew to a lonely spot on the coast of the Sea of Galilee. But when he got there, the crowds had already got wind of where he was going and were there to greet him. Rather than turning the boat around and seeking another lonely spot, we're told that Jesus had compassion on the people. Literally, he was filled with tenderness over them. And he spent the whole day healing their sick. Then he miraculously fed them with 5 loaves and 2 fish. Come the end of a long and exhausting day, Jesus sent the crowds home and put the disciples in the boat with instructions to return to the other side. Alone at last, Jesus climbs a nearby mountain to pray. But in the middle of the night, he's interrupted again, this time by a massive storm that breaks on the Sea of Galilee and threatens the very lives of his disciples in the boat. So he leaves off his private time, he walks across the water, He saves the disciples, calms the storm, and the boat safely reaches the other side of the lake, Gennesaret. And what do they encounter there? Crowds! Jesus is instantly recognised. The word spreads. The people gather. And Jesus spends the rest of the day healing all of those that can touch him. Well, that's 24 hours in the life of Jesus. And if you don't think that's a recipe for stress, then you and I live on different planets. You see, I think Jesus withdrew to non-Jewish territory, not only to escape any political ill favour, but also to get a temporary respite from the crowds, from the exhaustion of his ministry, to be alone with his disciples, to be refreshed and pray. Is this part of your strategy to deal with stress? It's the first part of my strategy, to withdraw. Not to run away, not to turn your back on life, not to choose just to live off the grid, but just to take some time out to withdraw from the pressures and stress of life. It can be as simple as stopping and taking 3 deep breaths. That's just one, by the way. It can be as significant as planning a 3-month holiday. It might be a 2-hour walk on the beach or a coffee break with a close friend at your favourite cafe or bar. Withdraw and seek some solace. It's okay. Jesus did it. It's really just plain common sense. But let's move on and see what happens next after Jesus withdraws. But look, a Canaanite woman from the vicinity came to him crying out, "O Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and is suffering terribly." This is almost the unthinkable, isn't it? Yet another interruption. For goodness sake, can this man get no peace? Despite his best efforts, Jesus has been recognised and now is being assailed by a desperate woman to heal her horribly sick daughter. Somehow I don't think this is a chance encounter on the road. Although this woman is not Jewish, I think she knows exactly who Jesus is and what he can do for her. I think she's done her research and tracked him down. For she addresses Jesus with 2 theologically loaded words which would just not have rolled off the tongue of a non-Jewish person. "O Lord," and "Son of David." Now, Lord should not simply be read as Sir or even Master, though it does mean these things. But when it is used in the New Testament and applied to Jesus, it means more than this. The word Lord, which is kurios in Greek, means far more than this when it's applied to Jesus. It was the word that translators of the Hebrew Scriptures, the Christian Old Testament, used in place of the name of God, Yahweh in Hebrew. And Son of David is a favourite Jewish messianic title. David was the greatest king Israel had ever known. The Messiah would come from his family and would sit on his throne and rule over Israel and the nations eternally. So, how does Jesus reply to this highly informed and desperate request for help? Jesus completely ignores her. He did not answer her a word. Now, isn't this a little surprising? Isn't it rather out of character for Jesus? After all, it's the only time in the whole New Testament where Jesus simply turns his back on someone in need and walks away. This woman is not a Jew, but she knows exactly who Jesus is and she acknowledges him publicly. Now, in the New Testament, that's called faith. So Jesus is walking away from a woman of faith with an urgent request, completely ignoring her. Now, I like apocalyptic movies. One of my favourites is The Book of Eli. Now, be warned, this is an R-rated movie due to some of the violent content. So if you're going to watch it, be wise and respect the censor's rating. I mean, it's a clean as a whistle as far as sexual content is concerned, That's perhaps surprising these days. But still, I wouldn't be very happy if my grandchildren watched it. Now, there's one scene in this movie that I find very profound. Eli is a man with a mission. It's a spiritual mission, and he believes that God has called him to it. He also believes that God will protect him so long as he stays the course and sticks to the plan. But while travelling on the road to reach his goal, in this decimated, chaotic anarchy that America has become, he encounters a situation in which two innocent travellers are about to be attacked, raped and murdered by a marauding road gang. He has the will to help because he's a decent human being. He thinks he can help because he is a man who knows how to handle himself. But if he stops and helps, will it compromise his mission? Well, it means that he becomes capacitated. He may even die with the people he's trying to help. The success of his mission is at stake if he stops to help these individuals. So he's faced with an awful decision: the success of the mission that he's called to, or the fate of the individuals. He galvanizes himself with the decision he finally makes as he mutters, "It's not your concern. Stick to the plan." You may call this expediency. Perhaps it is. But I think this is the sort of tension that Jesus is now wrestling with. It's the sort of tension that every leader has to wrestle with. In fact, any person with any purpose in life has to wrestle with this question. The woman is not just one more interruption to the private time Jesus needs. She's presenting Jesus with another tension which adds yet another layer of stress to the mix. Jesus is not ignoring the woman. I think he's thinking hard. He's praying hard. Does he stop and help this woman in desperate need with a sick and suffering daughter, or does he stick to the plan? I think this becomes clear as the story proceeds, for eventually the disciples stop Jesus and urge him, "Please do something about this situation. Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. For goodness sake, get rid of her, because she's giving us a headache." No, I think they're saying, "Jesus, the idea was that we would be incognito in this place. This woman is blowing that out of the water. For goodness sake, heal the girl and let's move on." How does Jesus reply to this suggestion? He says to them, not to the woman, by the way, she's still been completely ignored, "I was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel." In other words, she is not part of the plan, and I've decided to stick to the plan. Now, here's the second part of my strategy to deal effectively with stress. Make a plan and stick to it. But the problem with this is, as soon as you make a plan, divide it into tasks, prioritise those tasks, if you're going to stick to the plan, then something's got to go. There is a cost to making a plan and sticking to it. Sometimes to yourself, sometimes, unfortunately, to other people. The urgent cannot be allowed to trump the important. But effectively dealing with stress means being able to say no, even when other people are going to find it hard and probably misinterpret you as a result. So Jesus comes to a decision. At this point in time, the Gentiles do not figure in his mission. The resources he has are for the Jews. And we have seen those resources are actually limited by Jesus' physical, mental, and emotional capacity. Everyone seems to be okay with this except the woman, because while Jesus is having this big picture discussion with his disciples, she takes the opportunity to slip in and prostrate herself at Jesus' feet. The word that Matthew uses here is literally, she worshipped Jesus. It's an act of utter self-abasement, commitment, and worship. And in this, she renews her appeal. "Lord, help me." John Wimber once said that this is the most profound prayer anyone can utter. Lord, help me. In my experience, the prayer of a desperate person at the end of their tether is a prayer that God always answers. However, the answer might not always be what one might expect. And such is the case here with this woman. For although Jesus now finally notices her and talks to her, his answer is not very encouraging. Jesus replied, saying, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." Now, there are two things we can say about Jesus' reply here. Jesus' answer does not reflect what he happens to be feeling at the moment or what is most convenient for him at this point in time. "Sorry, woman, I'm on a break." No, this is about doing what is right, what is just, what is fair, what is most appropriate. Jesus is saying that he does not have the right, even as the Son of God, to step outside the parameters of his mission. He has been sent by the Father to fulfill a particular task. And at the moment, that only relates to the nation of Israel. And it is not right for him to deviate from that task. Just as for Eli, this woman is not as concerned. But secondly, he calls her a dog. This, of course, was the highly derogatory term that Jews used to refer to all Jewish people of any race, to Gentiles. Jesus is literally calling this woman a spiritual woman, a woman of faith, a dog. On the face of it, it's really insulting, isn't it? And I'm not going to wrestle with this one now. We don't have time, to be quite honest. I'm not entirely sure why Jesus uses this term. My best guess at the moment is that he uses this offensive term to underscore the importance of the issue, together with the finality of his decision. No more correspondence will be entered into. But now the unthinkable happens. The woman answers back, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Now, in the patriarchal society of the day, this is seriously scandalous. A woman speaking back to a man and contradicting him. A Gentile woman speaking back to a Jewish man who is attempting to dismiss her. Really is an incredible reply. Yes, Lord. First, she makes it plain that she's in full agreement with Jesus' reasoning. He's right. Agreed, Jesus. It's quite ridiculous to take good food that has been prepared for the children and drop it on the floor for the family dog. But there's a but. Yes, Lord, but. Have you ever tried saying that to God? Sounds a little scandalous, doesn't it? However, it's the brilliance of the woman's reply. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. The woman takes the metaphor that Jesus has used to dismiss her and turns it straight back on him. She's arguing that there is something in Jesus' ministry that rightfully belongs to the Gentiles now, to the dogs, to her. We used to have a family dog, a black lab called Caradus. The rule in our family was that anything that fell on the floor in the kitchen or dining room rightly belonged to the dog. She was only roundly disciplined if she climbed up onto the bench or whipped off with a chicken breast that was sitting there ready to be cooked, which she did on one occasion. Anything else on the floor was hers. So we can understand exactly what the woman is saying here, can't we? Yes, Jesus, but there is something that you can rightfully do for me. And I think at this point, Jesus is just gobsmacked. Then Jesus said, "Oh, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed at that very moment. Jesus quite simply changes his mind. Why? Because this Gentile woman has convinced him that she really is part of the plan. Her great faith has caused him to readjust the plan. Now, I don't think Jesus grants her request because of her faith. He wasn't just waiting for a particular level of faith to heal her daughter, like a series of hoops that she had to jump through. The woman's faith moved something in the heart and mind of Jesus. and he responded to his faith with awe and with a renewed compassion and with grace. Some of you listening to this message today will be feeling that your prayers have been ignored by God, just met with silence. Maybe you've been told that's the case because of unconfessed sin, or maybe you don't have enough faith. Well, let me say this morning, that's complete and utter nonsense. God does not speak by silence. God's silence is not a no, it's not go away. It's simply an invitation to keep on asking. It's an invitation to hold fast to your faith, to continue to affirm your belief in God's own faithfulness, to keep pressing in, to keep pressing on. Well, let's wrap this up. The third step in my strategy to deal effectively with stress is this: don't borrow trouble. In many ways, the story we have looked at this morning is a story about a stressed woman seeking urgent help from a person who is themselves dealing with stress. And it's the faith of the woman, together with the faithfulness of Jesus, that finally brings resolution to the tension in this encounter. Not borrowing trouble is really about faith. It means trusting that when the day dawns and you have to get up and do the thing that's causing you stress and get it done, that you'll be given the resources to succeed. You've taken time out in the midst of a stressful situation. You've made a plan and you've stuck to it, by and large. Finally, will you have faith? Faith in yourself. Faith in God's faithfulness, despite circumstances, disappointment, feelings of inadequacy. Will you hold fast to your faith like the woman? Will you trust that all will be well? Will you? If so, pray with me. Father, we thank you for this word from your word. We ask that you would help us, that you would help us trust you and reaffirm our faith in you and your faithfulness in our times of stress. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you.